Education in the postbellum years of 1869 to 1909 was marked by an increase in student enrollment, which more than doubled, and what appears to be a 572% increase in total expenditures for schools. At roughly the same time, 15 states passed compulsory school laws. But behind that public system was something lesser known, a growing marketplace where private companies competed to supply the materials that schools used every day. One of the clearest examples of this shift is Edwin Ginn and his firm, Ginn and Company. Hello, fellow historians. I'm Andrea Henderson, and in this video, I'm exploring how Ginn and the success of his company did and did not reflect broader economic trends. What do I mean? Well, it depends on which broader economic trends we're talking about. So let me explain. Edwin Ginn was not just an educator. He was a textbook publisher who helped build one of the most influential educational companies in the United States. A memorial published by the company itself emphasized his role in shaping the firm's direction and purpose. Rather than operating locally, Ginn and Company expanded into a national and even international publishing enterprise. This alone suggests that education was no longer just local or informal. It was becoming organized, scaled, and commercial. We can see this commercialization very clearly in advertising and catalog materials. And if you're not on newspapers.com, you are missing out. It was so much fun digging through the old papers. I wonder if they'll sponsor my next video. I think you have to have a following first. Anyway, advertisements show Ginn and Company promoting a wide range of titles: nature readers, primers, literary and classical texts across multiple subject areas. And these were not just niche offerings. They were designed to meet the needs of entire school systems across multiple grade levels. And the advertisements were clearly targeting school systems. And just as important, the company lists offices in cities like Boston, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, Dallas, and even London, signifying a certain level of economic success. The number of offices and representatives found in various advertisements and publications indicate a national distribution network and a broad competitive market reach. It also suggests that textbook publishing required infrastructure, printing, shipping, sales, and regional coordination on a scale that resembled other major industries of the period. Additionally, I found school reading lists and course materials repeatedly including Ginn and Company across multiple titles and grade levels. This suggests that their books were not isolated purchases. They were systematically integrated into school curricula. And once adopted, these books shaped not just what students read, but how subjects were structured and taught. The most direct evidence of how textbooks were sold comes from school board and education reports. And one report describes contracts totaling large sums for school books awarded through competitive bidding. Ginn and Company appears alongside other publishers like American Book Company as successful bidders. And another example shows a board of education entering into a multi-year contract with a publisher to supply textbooks. These documents reveal several critical financial or economic points. Textbooks were not casually purchased. They were contracted at scale. And publishers competed directly with one another. School systems sometimes committed to long-term agreement. This matters because it shows that textbook publishing functioned as a formal marketplace where companies had to secure institutional approval rather than individual buyers. Winning a contract meant gaining access to an entire district or region, which could guarantee sustained revenue over multiple years. In other words, this was a structured marketplace, not an informal exchange. And this system was reinforced by broader educational structures. State-issued courses of study and teacher manuals that I came across show that education was becoming standardized. And these documents outline approved materials, structured curricula, and formal adoption processes. This gave enormous influence to publishers who secured those contracts. If a company's books were selected, they could effectively define the content of instruction for thousands of students at once. Standardization, therefore, did not just organize education, it concentrated power in the hands of those who controlled approved materials. Which begs the question of how that plays out today. Another video, another time. So Ginn operated within and helped expand a system defined by competitive bidding, large-scale contracts, standardized curricula, and national distribution networks. This reflects a broader transformation in postbellum America, that broader trend in education. Education was no longer just a public good delivered locally. It had become part of a developing market economy shaped by both government structures and private enterprise. By examining Ginn and Company through these minimal sources, we can see how one individual's business activity reflects a much larger shift. The rise of textbook publishing reveals how education itself became organized, standardized, and commercialized in the late 19th century. I said he did and did not reflect broader trends. So Edwin Ginn managed not just to survive, but thrive during the booms and busts of the late 1800s. His timing was key. As he missed the Panic of 1873, he had established partnerships prior to 1873, but he established Ginn and Company in 1879 when the markets were stabilizing. Ginn and Company was still going through the downturn of the 1890s, a downturn that Friedman argued would not have happened, or at least not so severely, had the U.S. remained on silver or gold standard. So I'm I'm going to end with some notes on our readings and how they might relate to my topic. So Dan Baum's sod-busting article, The Expansion of Farming Communities and the Need to Build Institutions on the Plains, helps explain why companies like Ginn and Company found a growing market for standardized textbooks in newly developing schools. While Dan Baum highlights the struggles and argues against the romantic image of the one-room schoolhouse, he does acknowledge that they existed despite the hardships and challenges of needing children for labor and very little property taxes for schools from poor homesteading families. Frischman et al., Tragedy of the Commons, or retrospective. Basically, Ginn and Company's role in producing and distributing textbooks reflects the broader shift from knowledge as a loosely shared resource to a structured and commercially managed system. Political construction of the national market. Ginn and Company's rise as a major textbook publisher was made possible by the creation of a nationally integrated market that allowed educational materials to be standardized, produced, and distributed by rail across regions as the migration occurred westward. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all on the next one.